go through the metrics and have a discussion about that. And we get a short presentation on Benson. And we have a hard stop at 6:30. So, Bob, hit it.
All right, I'll do my best. Good evening, board members and members of the public. Thank you for coming this evening. I've been looking forward to this moment for some time because it gives you an opportunity, me an opportunity to share with you, with everyone, the work that's been going on in a short 5 months, actually. It just seems like it's longer, but it's only been 5 months. Essentially, this is a status report of progress made on board priorities. The point here is to provide context and clarity and transparency to district work. What I'm going to present tonight represents a significant amount of work on behalf of students in the community by countless individuals, the employees of Portland Public Schools plus contractors, literally countless individuals. Documents you will be reviewing are the workflow document, and I also am going to give you some organizational charts so that you can see what the organizational chart was when I arrived, what it is now, and what I anticipate that it will be in July when I leave, and I'll give you the organizational chart as we go along here. And does everyone have a copy of the document, the workflow? If you don't have, it's going to be hard to follow the discussion. So, if you don't have one, would you like one? Yeah, thank you. All the board members have them?
Yeah.
Looks like we do.
Let me talk a little bit about what the workflow document is, and then I'll kind of start going through it a little bit. This is an attempt to organize the work for this year, but it's also resulted in at least organizing some work for the future as well. It's an articulation of, again, work to be done in ensuing years. It's a simple means to keep track of progress toward and reporting progress toward meeting board priorities. It's a way for each direct report to understand the work of colleagues and the way for the board members and the general public to understand the work that's being done as well. It's a roadmap for us, for you, and for the new superintendent. It's intended to help provide that person some sense of what's happened right prior to his or her arrival and what he or she may need to attend to, amongst other things, once they take the position. Again, it's an effort to provide context, clarity, and transparency to district work. And most of all, it's a working document. There are going to be editorial changes, and it is sort of a progression from what the workflow document that you saw in the fall. So let me talk about the organization of the document if you have it before you. You can see that what we've done in the fall when you received this, it was just a list of basically priorities and projects, basically all projects. And now what we've done is placed the board priorities on the top and the metrics right below it. The priority is in that sort of off red color, and the metrics in green. And then the projects are below it. You'll see in some cases that projects are listed in a couple of different areas. That's because some projects overlap into different board priorities. You'll also see what we have added to this is a status update in brown. So on the first page, you can see that the non-representative salary schedule is completed. The increased capacity of hiring staff is in process. Talent acquisition management system is completed. Benefit administration software is completed, and the successful school survey is in process. And that is the same throughout the document, so you can see the status. Also, there's notes at the end that were taken from each of the direct reports, and I've asked the direct reports to be here to answer questions you may have. So rather than take you line item by line item through the document, what I intend to do here tonight, because I think that would take more time than is necessary, is I would like you to just take a few minutes and kind of peruse the document. And then what I want to do is focus on 5 areas and then have a little discussion after that about some pieces of the document that probably need to be refined, a couple of edits. and then allow you to ask questions you may have about the document. So why don't you take a few minutes and kind of get used to what it looks like, and if you need a copy, I've got it here.
So I have one question, just,
Sure.
you don't need to answer it right away, but just something for you to keep in mind when you get back into it, which is, I don't see a timeline moving forward that shows the intervals at which, the intervals and the venues at which we will check in on each of these metrics. And so I think that's something that we need to discuss and lay out in this conversation, so that we're not just getting a where we are now view, but we have a system, or we start to get a system in place of how we're routinely checking in on these metrics and where.
Maybe you all had a chance to.
I think
Yeah.
we've all.
So maybe we can
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
dispense with that, okay? All right, then I'll move ahead, and I'm gonna, the 5 areas that I want to talk about, I'm gonna, first of all, talk about reorganization of central administration, because I think that's one that you all, wanted me to take a look at. So let's talk about that first, and I'll show you what my thinking is about that and what we've done. So I'll see if you take it and pass it around.
Okay, so are you working, so this is separate from?
Yes,
our-
this is a different
okay,
document
okay.
you do not have.
We'll need one more.
So the first one is the organizational chart when I arrived. And as you can see, there were, if you count them up, there were 13 direct reports at that time. The chief of staff, general counsel, ombudsman, and then all of the folks that are down on the line below that. That was the organizational chart when I arrived. I felt, just looking at this, and it's actually before I was even put on the payroll, that was too much for the superintendent to monitor by himself. And it seemed to me that we needed to combine some things. And the first obvious one was to combine some of the operations. So if you would move to the second one, this is in January. Second one is in January 2017, it says in the upper left-hand corner. And I started by basically placing most of the operations under the Deputy Chief Executive Officer. That would be Yusuf. I moved his position, elevated his position 1 notch. And at that time, I had all of those items that are under him in January, except for human resources and system planning and performance. And so I've added those 2 as of January. I will just make a comment about the human resources. Depending on how, this was all set up with the idea in mind, not only to be operational this year, but to leave options for the person coming in, some choices that they could think about how they want to organize their job. And it can be argued, as I've looked at our organizational charts from other districts, that there is no really one perfect system. Some are flat, some are more vertical. It just sort of depends on the needs at the time, okay? And it could be argued, for example, that because human resources is the department that hires all your professional staff, that they might be on the other side of the aisle if you were to have, say, a chief academic officer, which does not appear on any of these charts, but is an option for the person that comes next. That could be an argument. By the same token, it could be argued that it's under operations, so that's a choice that someone could make. Systems planning and performance, that would be Sarah Singer's department. That too could be under the academic side or the operations side. I'm putting it under operations for the moment, but that's one that could be moved around in my mind's eye. And you can see, if you count the number of direct reports, that right now I have 8 direct reports. So we've gone from 13 to 8 in a very short 5-month period. Okay? And it just made sense to me that if you're going to have the degree of school modernization and the issues with regard to the chief operating officer dealing with it in health and safety. And it's all tied up in financial issues that it all ought to be sort of under the same department. And it just made logical sense. On the other side of the aisle, it was a little less clear to me. It could be again argued that a chief academic officer should do the academic side. Deciding what to do about that and whether to have that depends a little bit on the superintendent you hire, in my mind's eye, and what that person wants to do. And if you believe you have someone, or you can find someone that can be really effective as a chief academic officer. In my mind's eye, that particular side of the aisle needs some clarity throughout the district, significant clarity throughout the district. And that's not something that one can do in 1 year, but I'm abundantly aware of it in my brief period of time here. So that's how it stands at the moment. Now, if you move to the next one, I will interject that that the next one is partly a result of my thinking about this when I first sat down. I felt like didn't really need 3 assistant superintendents, and I want to stop for a moment and talk about Harriet Adair, who has served this district since 1969. She has served countlessly, hundreds of thousands of students have been influenced by the work that she has done. She is choosing to retire. She'll be retiring as of the end of the school year. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that I know that she has done, and I'm sure there's a lot more that I don't know that she's done. Among the things that I've heard since I've arrived here in my brief period of time is that she is a person who has helped nurture our administrators of color, has helped encourage them into the profession and nurture them, and that's a huge thing for us. She is also deeply connected to preschool and all of the work that needs to be done there to provide our students being ready for school. She has a love for that we have talked about, and it's very, very impressive work that's been done there. Also, and more recently, I know that Gary Withers from Concordia has sung her praises with regard to the 3 to PhD program, and these are just the pieces that I've seen since I've been here. I can't only imagine all of the work that she has done and all of the thanks that are owed to her. I cannot. Harriet, has it been 43 years? How many years? 47 years. Wow. Think about that. So I would like to extend to her a round of applause for a moment, because I just really appreciate it. I want to add that she has been invaluable with her institutional knowledge. There have been times when I thought about doing some things, and she's given me some very good reasons why it would or wouldn't work, and is deeply invested in the history of how things came to be in Portland Public Schools. So with that in mind, this particular flow chart shows 7 direct reports. Again, it could be this could be a situation where the 3 officers that are left on the academic side are under a chief academic officer, but it depends on the superintendent what that person wants to do. If they're strong in curriculum and instruction, they may want to fill that role themselves directly, because there's lots of work to be done there. I'm doing that myself at this point in time, 5 months in. I meet with my 3 folks once a week right now, where some of the things we're working on are the middle school project, and just a whole raft of other things, trying to break down the silos so that the 3 groups, the three organizations will flow together more smoothly. You can see, to be determined in the lower left-hand corner, those are some items that will have to be placed in other departments, and we'll have to determine what we're going to do with it. This leaves the incoming superintendent with some options about how they choose to structure the district. It also creates an organization that is easier and more streamlined for me to work with at this point in time for the remainder of my tenure. Again, this is a vertical structure, and I could see it turning more horizontal at some point in the future, depending on the needs of the district. and the skill set of the people that you have here. We are very fortunate to have some very skilled people now, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to continue to do that. So that's the first item that I wanted to talk about. That is, for the record, on page 14 of the larger document, it is referenced rebuild and reorganize management structure. That's the one that it refers to there. So that's the first piece. And one of the things that is a little concerning to me about this tonight is that there's a lot of information in a short period of time, but I do want to pause for questions that you may have at critical times, and I think this is one of them. Yes.
The board office is listed as under Sasha Perrin, who's the chief of staff, but in actuality, under board policy, the board office is under the chairman of the board. So you may want to,
Yeah, that's an area.
may want to fix that.
Thank you.
For the last 2 years, the board office has reported, the staff in the board office has reported to the chief of staff.
Yeah, well, nothing wrong with them reporting and stuff, but it's not under them. It's under the chairman of the board. It's clear in policy. It states it right out there. I checked, and I've always pointed that out to them, that really, in this case, the board office is under Mr. Curler. If he wants that, put him around under Sasha Perrin. But in the final say, that's who tells the board office what to do if there's a discrepancy. They can change the policy if they want.
We, not they.
Yeah, I mean, I'm speaking of you as they.
I think we have enough doublespeak going around this nation.
Any other questions on what we've done?
No, good.
But what were you talking about that you said referred to the organizational restructuring as a stated priority?
Yeah, it's on page 14 of the greater document, and it's basically stated as rebuild and reorganize management structure.
Oh, so this is under other. So
Yes.
the many things that we're working on that are not specifically called out in our board priorities.
Right.
Yeah.
So Bob, I mean, I would say that this is a huge amount of work and progress, and it is streamlined. And I think that that it's going to make everybody's work from the top to the bottom easier. And I appreciate also the flexibility that's still built in as a new superintendent arrives.
Yeah, and again, all of this work is done with the eye toward the future to try to set the table for that person so that the transition can be smooth for them, and that includes the workflow document. I will say that there's continues to be work under the top tiers to try to, find some how we work through and make things work more smoothly. The community outreach specialist is something we're looking at right now. I've asked for an individual who's doing an assessment, and next week we'll be looking at that particular group of people and trying to begin to make some decisions about what we do there, because they report to a number of different departments. So that's a conversation, for example, that we'll have to have, and it's not the only one. And I don't expect all those conversations to be completed in the next 5 months. I think that there will continue to be some work to be done after my term is finished.
But, breaking, we heard from numerous fronts and acknowledge ourselves that breaking down the silos is really, really important. And this work is.
It's a step in that direction.
It's a step in that direction.
There's more work to be done, but that's
Yeah.
definitely the intent.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions on this one? I just want to make sure, because this is new information for all.
Do you want to just provide a brief update relative to this chart on filling roles with people?
That is referred to in here, but I will talk about that a little bit. We've retired. I think I can't recall, at our high water mark in terms of central office people, we were down like, 57? And we're now at 42, and there's been a number of people leave in the meantime, so we're filling in faster than we're losing. And we may or may not choose to fill all those positions. So that's the first piece. The second piece is that we retained the services of a consulting firm, and they're in the process right now of helping us find a chief counsel, general counsel. And in terms of the communications department, and that's actually another important piece of this, because while it's not standing alone right now, I mean, it could be, again, that could be a choice. And we're in the process right now of interviewing folks for that, not the top level, but, people for that. Had a different view at one point in time to hire the top person and then let that person fill in. But I have found that, given my interim status, that it's not the easiest thing in the world to hire people for the very top positions. And so we can no longer wait and have a communications department that is not more effective. And we've had people do some really good work. Courtney has been amazing, and done way more than a person should be asked to do. And I
Luckily, she's two people.
then, well, we could make, yes, I'm not going there. But in addition to that, we've had some consulting from outside, and the person, Amanda Richter Taylor, who's just done a marvelous job as well in the last short period of time, and will help us through until the end of the year. So I think that answers a big part of the question.
Any other comments or questions on the org chart?
Just
Yeah.
Just as a comment, I would say I think you're thinking on how to hire in the face of reluctance to sign on at the top level is very sound. I think that's exactly what.
Okay, without further ado, I'm going to move along. I've been told that my wait time isn't particularly good in the best of circumstances, so this is about as good as it gets. So that was your chance. Ask questions. All right, the second one that I would like to talk about is completing the 2012 bond, and for that, you can turn to pages 10 initially, and then eventually 15, I think, as well. Page 10 is really the one that captures it best. It's impressive to me, and I don't want to be taking credit for credit of others. Jerry and Yusuf and folks and Courtney, these folks have done marvelous work. You know it, I know it. And we're just documenting it here. Basically, this whole document represents really the work of everybody else, and all I've done is just kind of pull it together and direct a little traffic. And if you haven't had the opportunity, as I have, to go through, for example, Franklin, it's just breathtaking, the work that's going on out there. I'm just so excited. I'll say this much: I don't do anything on Facebook since I've taken this job at all, for my own personal reasons. But I did take some pictures when I was out at Franklin, and I put them on there, and I made the comment that I feel humbled to be a very small part of something very special. And that is the same for Roosevelt, Fabian. Fabian is coming along now. I was out there the other day, and it's starting to really take shape. I actually have a colleague in Missoula who was a graduate of Franklin, so she saw that on there. She had no idea what I was doing. It was stunned to learn that her former teaching colleague was the interim superintendent for Moreland Public Schools, which was kind of amusing in its own right. But nonetheless, it's really good work. It's fabulous stuff, and it's reflected here. And I won't perseverate over that. I'm just sharing with you, where it is. And I think I referred to page 15 as well. I'm not sure what piece is on page 15. Oh, these are board areas of focus, and it's on there as well. And this is just sort of a different page here. We actually threw something in there that was a heat chart from some time back about the months. The red represents the months of heavy-duty work by the board, so it's on that one as well. Any question about that? I would direct to my colleagues in the room. Do you have any questions about the 2012 bond and where it's going?
Well, I have a question about our metrics. So this in pink is Jerry's proposed language. It's different than what our metric was before, right?
I have a proposed language change for the phase that the bond is in right now and how we're performing that. And as far as the green metrics, I imposed 3 more on ourselves than you did last year from accountability standpoint because of where the bond is right now. So we're hold us accountable for 7 methods of measurement right now instead of 4. And in the pink, I think where the bond is at right now, the main, to me, it's, the board can do if they want, of course, but to me, a goal has to be, for us, has to be controllable. We look, for example, like with what the weather has done for the on-time and the 3 weeks, and we look where the cost escalation factors and we are going. I think it's important. We always look at time and look at money when we're doing our individual projects. I think the key is to make sure that we're not leaving the program on the table when we're doing work, whether it's value engineering or constructing. We have to deliver the educational program, and in my mind, I thought that needed to be brought up, but it's completely up to you guys on any of this.
Amanda, can you tell us what that language was before?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
Jerry, you've got one on here twice, is that, am I reading that wrong?
I
The
didn't-
very last one on public improvement project, et cetera, that's also number 5, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, so it got put on there twice when it was updated, so we're adding
Okay.
6. The language before says to ensure that the school building improvement bond continues tracking on time, on budget, delivers innovative 21st century schools. So what we're doing with the proposed here is managing these projects, this bond, in order to maximize the instructional programming and the stakeholder input, and then also, of course, deliver 21st century schools. So it's just a suggestion.
Anything else on the 2012 plan?
Were we getting
That's what he read it to you.
sorry.
So it's ensure that the school building improvement bond continues tracking on time and on budget and delivers innovative 21st century schools.
And so Jerry, what you were trying to capture that wasn't included in that is the ongoing project management?
No, so to maximize the instructional programming, that we're not cutting out, as you're landing the bond and looking at from this day forward, as we land this summer, you're looking at grant, monies, contingencies, bond, very natural right now to be where it's at. It's important that we are delivering as much of this educational program for the Grant High School and to finish up these 3 this summer with the educational program. So that's typically what I've recommended at this phase of a bond measure. And then also the on time, on budget, or at least the ensures to itself. I can't ensure anything when I lose over 3 weeks of weather delay and,
Are you saying
And the
we're gonna have
escalation.
more, are you saying we're gonna have more weather delays this week?
well, I heard Thursday already, it doesn't look good again.
I haven't made up my mind yet.
Yeah. Anyway, suggestion. And then, yes, we added 2 more metrics. The apply lessons learned, the update of the PMP. These are things that are either direct accountability feedback from performance auditor and or bond accountability committee, and or, apply lessons learned is just a natural thing to do. So, and the lessons learned goes into our original project management plan from when we started the bond, and we update it, tweak it, refine it for greater accountability. So I'm putting 2 more metrics upon us, and I think they're doing it.
So I like adding the instructional programming part, Jerry, but I'd be opposed to taking anything out regarding on time and on budget. I think the public expects us to be on time and on budget. We need to make sure that we at least are saying that that's our goal.
That's fine.
Thank you.
And also, just, it was important to us in creating these priorities that they all express an end that we're looking for rather than a means. So sort of the beginning of this is to provide direction and management is a means. So I don't know what our process is for actually changing a priority or.
It was just, you had them through discussion, so I
Yeah.
think that's fine.
See you.
Just leave it the way it was, but add maximize instructional programming and stakeholder input to deliver 21st century schools
Right, on our budget.
on time and on budget.
Yep.
In the most cost.
Right, there we go.
Other questions on the 2012 plan?
No, except that, the metrics that we are lucky enough to just get delivered to us from the bond accountability committee are really incredible, and they do an amazing job of tracking them, and they do all that work for us in this area, so we're fortunate, I think.
It's impressive work, it really is. You know, a cost overrun in another district on a high school, it's rather interesting, and I think about us in that regard, and I feel very fortunate. So, all right, well, I'm going to move along and talk about responding to health and safety and preparing for the 2017 bond, because they're kind of interwoven in a way. That's on page 12, and this represents just a huge amount of work, as you well know, not only from the standpoint of Yusuf, Jerry's, and Courtney's shops in terms of preparing the information, but also from Amanda and, you know, other folks who are putting it together in the form of a way to put it out for a bond when that time comes. And you had a presentation the other night, and I'm not going to try to replicate any of it, because the people that did it did a far better job of it than I could. You know, I'll just pause I'm just acknowledging it, but if you have any questions about where we are on it, the folks are right here in the room, and we can certainly answer them.
No, other than to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work that's been done.
And when I think about where the district was with the health and safety and where it is now, I mean, that's incredible in its own right. And the bond work, and I guess I'll put this out. When I first, my third day here, we had an incident where some people were protesting that we didn't put the bond on the fall ballot, as you may recall. And I knew in my own mind that the package wasn't ready. The package is now ready, and I think it's going to speak loudly to the voters. I think that's major accomplishment.
We also hired an amazing team to do that.
Yes. On page 12, also, it talks about our labor contracts. And we are in the process of interest-based bargaining. And you can see when the other contracts are up, and so we have a human resources department that's definitely going to have its hands full with various contracts. And Sean, would you like to make any comments about the PAT work and with IDB and the progress where we are at this point in time? Sure. And I didn't warn you, so. Pop quiz.
All right. So in regards to PAT contract negotiations, we're still doing interest-based bargaining. We have broken up into 2 teams, and we're addressing all of the issues. If you recall, the union had a number of issues. We're still looking at some of the issues that are left on the table. We will be bringing to the board a number of tentative agreements that we have entered into. PAT is going through their ratification process, and as they get closer to finalizing that process, we'll be bringing the tentative agreements to board for consideration. In the meantime, we've identified early April, as a place to try to look at finalizing the bargaining process.
Any comments on the other agreements?
Does early April mean you're hoping to have a contract there for us to vote on by early April?
Well,
Is that what that means?
that's what we have
Hoping
tentatively
for.
planned,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
However, we will be nearing the end of negotiations, and hopefully we'll be able to reach an agreement.
Right.
But we have a placeholder.
That would be great.
And Steve and Julie participated early on, so thank you to you, and Paul and Amy are doing a lot of work, and have done a lot of work, so from a board perspective. Do you guys want to say anything?
I just think
Very solid.
I just think that we did all this front-end work on the IBB process, and we've really been true to it, and it's been really constructive and helpful in terms of listening to one another and hearing one another, and I don't have anything to compare it to, but it seems to me like at this point we are seeing the benefits of that approach.
I sat through the first 2 days and then one subsequent meeting. You just never know where things are going to become more difficult because we do have some points of disagreement, but I really like operating from the perspective of these are our interests, these are why our interests, so that there's a deeper understanding of what's behind it. It makes for better proposals at the end of the day and more problem solving as opposed to people assuming that the other side is doing this because of something that they very well may not be. So I do, there's no one perfect process, but given the circumstances, this is actually, I think, the right process for now. And I'm hopeful that we will continue to show great progress. So thank you, Sean.
I also wanted to make note that we're also in negotiations with the PAT sub-teachers contract as well, and we're using traditional bargaining as part of that process. And then we have the rest of our remaining contracts, we received a demanded bargain from SEIU, which we will start negotiations with them shortly using traditional bargaining. And the other bargaining units, essentially, although their contracts are up, we have not received the demanded bargain yet. And one of the strategies that we're looking at is getting outside counsel to assist with those contracts and help us with negotiations.
And before I leave, on the first page, the non-represented salary schedule was completed, as you know, and that was a very big step. And the talent acquisition management system was completed, and also benefit administration software. So those are 3 other items that have gone on the personnel.
Steve?
Why would we bring in outside counsel? Are we just not, we're not able to do it ourselves?
Essentially, we do not have the bandwidth within the HR department. We're still down another person within labor relations. IBB, and many of the folks who have said, and on the board, it takes a lot of time. And so we're putting a lot of resources in terms of making this IEP process successful. You're welcome. Any more questions?
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next item I want to talk about is on page 12 also, and it's the budget process. And Yusuf, you want to say a couple quick words? We're kind of in the middle of that, but go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. As we presented to the board the other day, the co-chair budget kind of threw us off balance in a way. So we are working diligently to come up with an approach to balance the budget for next year. We're not doing this alone. We're working with other districts and seeing what they're doing and doing it in a partnership kind of deal. At the same time, we're going to be working with our folks internally to come up with that methodology that makes sense in terms of how we balance the budget going forward. One thing I want to keep reminding and keep in mind, because it's kind of easy to forget that this will not be the only year we're going to have to deal with. So considering a healthy reserve to deal with future years is going to be one of the things that we will be considering and we'll be talking to you about. Obviously, it's the board decision at the end of the day, but I feel it's our duty and responsibility to kind of present that to you. So we'll come forward with that very soon.
Yusuf and I had a pretty in-depth conversation about the budget process today. On Friday, I went down to COSA just for one day, actually, because I wanted to take a reading on the situation down there and also connect up with the other big districts and determine what we might do together. And we have telephone conference call tomorrow to have a little decision or some decisions about what we might do together as a block. So this is something that I'm very much hands-on along with Yusuf. I mean, he's the more technical person, but I have done a few budgets in my time too, so we'll work together. I think we feel pretty good about we're on the same page. So,
Okay. Good.
and then I want to talk a little bit about middle school planning. That's on page 4. I'll let Chris talk about that a little bit, and then I'll do a little follow-up.
Okay. As most of you know, we've been meeting since November of 2014, and it was kind of the brainstorming piece where we're gathering all the literature, trying to figure out what concept or what vision of middle schools we wanted. And that kind of came to fruition over the course of the year. So where we are with that is we completed the first draft of our seminal document. And it's fundamentally is what is PPS's vision of middle schools, what should it look like. And we have, in creating that seminal document, we've cross-referenced or done kind of a thorough and exhaustive research or evaluation of all the research out there. So we've kind of refined it down to specific categories, outlined what those categories should entail, and specifically, it would be what are the components, or what we call base components, what are the components that all middle schools will have, and what are those optional, like bells and whistle components that might be hand-tailored to a specific neighborhood or to a specific community. And it also, that seminal document includes a breakdown of those components by priority area. We've done a vetting of that seminal document by all the major constituents within the district, and we've kind of gone through some of those constituents a couple different times. And the document keeps getting refined every time we do that.
And notice he's saying smaller, but you can see it.
Like the original document, we kind of keep in place, but we keep refining it in the pieces that we want to kind of distill out and shop out and have more public. That's kind of an easier to digest piece. So we still have some final vetting to go through, and that would be with our middle school principal. We've gone through twice so far, we're going to go through again. PAT, and then with some key external partners. And that is just to vet the seminal document. I just want to make clear that as we move forward over the next couple of years with building these middle schools and framing and creating these middle schools, we will constantly be engaging the community at different levels. It could be the base components, or it could be those optional or bells and whistle components. So what I'm saying is, we won't only engage each constituent once, often it'll be more than once. We intend.
What do you mean by the bell?
So, I'm going to frame it under optional components. So every middle school gets the same thing for its base. Like every middle school will get math, every middle school will get literacy, every middle school might get an advisory period. But depending on the community, some middle schools might want to take an art theme, or they might want to take a science theme, or they may choose to be an IB, or they may choose to be an AVID. Those are kind of the embellishments that we wish to engage that community, both the teachers and the public, as to what do they see their middle school, what's the personality of those middle schools.
So that's not contingent on their fundraising capacity. That's just, these are things they can add to.
And what we intend to do is, whether it's base or optional component, the district would fund and support it in all aspects.
And so can you talk a little bit about the sort of unveiling and implementation of that? So part of it is looking forward to when we're reconstituting new middle schools, but when do we start applying what we've learned and what we believe to be best practice for middle school to our existing middle schools?
Okay. So the plan is kind of an iterative process. So it doesn't only focus on those potentially 2, 3, or 4 new middle schools that we might bring online in the future. It's also how you retrofit existing middle schools, and then not to exclude, because we're going to change some Ks to K5s. How does that impact the K5, and what do we need to do for those schools? So there is a part of creating something new, but there's also the component of retrofitting what we already have, or revisioning, such as in the case of K5, what those should look like.
So what's the time for that?
Okay, so the seminal document just for the middle school component, 6 through 8, which would have some aspects or threads to retrofitting existing middle schools. We intend to wrap that document up by mid-February and have the workflow basically by threads of work outlined to the times that we bring on these new middle schools, done by the end of February. From the end of February, then we're going to take that plan and start tweaking it to existing middle schools. What would that look like? And then subsequently from there, build the workflow and try to match it to time frames to do it.
But, so is there anything at all in our staffing plan for next school year or our master schedule process for middle schools for next school year that reflects that work and the recommendations in there?
No.
Where's my question?
No, we're not at a point where we're going to be implementing any of the scheduling. There's a scheduling committee, one of the many committees that the plan kind of sponsors. And they're gonna meet and create sample or possible schedules that can be implemented at the middle school. Kind of like templates that would work both for the new one and or retrofitting existing. So I guess what I'm saying in general, still lots of work to do, but the Sunbelt document will be finalized latest by the end of February. And workflow to build in the middle schools will have its first draft done by the end of February as well, and mapped out to the start of the 18-19, so 17-18.
Yeah, that's an error here.
18-19 school year.
So the big idea is that there will be a lot more commonality across our middle schools and the programming, and you want to have some pieces that can be determined by the school in terms of how they want to cluster their elective choices or something. But generally speaking, there's going to be a lot more guidance based on best practices about what the optimal middle school program is.
That's exactly.
We're trying to reconcile the tension of having making your middle school experience personalized, yet having common elements. Wherever you go in the district, you're going to see similar base program elements and similar.
I just throw in here just an editorial. On the very last page of the document, it has a list of items that are held off for at least this year into the future. And it doesn't specifically say that the planning year is next year, even though we're planning it now. But next year is the planning year, and the following year is the year of implementation for the two middle schools in question. So that'll be in addition to the document here, but that is intended, just so you know.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about articulation from K-5 all the way through high school and how that's affected by the middle schools?
Yeah, we're kind of looking at it as an opportunity to reshape things, and whether it's from the beginning or the end or the middle, you can do that in the entire district. So, if, for example, we identify certain base elements, like there's going to be world language, or there's going to be opportunities, a certain amount of opportunities for each kid to earn high school credit, that directly impacts what high school programming will look like. So what that means is we must purposely engage the high school communities, and in that engagement, understand that there's going to be some changes or needs for articulation of. Likewise, if we have some expectations around particular curriculum pieces at middle school that currently we can't support, we need to go into the elementary and put those supporting pieces in there. An obvious example is if we expect a middle school to be Avid ready, that means that perhaps the feeder schools should all go Avid school-wide. That would be a piece that we would need to go down to the K-5 and change across that system, as an example.
When we were doing the work with Panasonic, the other examples that I thought were, light bulbs went on. It was like language in middle school matches languages that are available in the high school. Music in the middle school matches music opportunity. Dance, theater, art, all those things articulated from middle school up to high school, and then back down CTE courses as well.
So you don't want to give these programs to dead end out of middle school, so you want it to articulate all the way through.
Or not have any music until you're a freshman in high school.
So I think the thing that's most exciting for us is it forces us to look at the entire system.
Right.
And it does it in a way that we're creating something for new, so it can have that ripple effect and, again, change the entire system as a result.
It'll be great for our kids.
Appreciate all the work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, we're cruising on it.
Yeah.
And when you talked about stakeholders, vetting it with some stakeholders, it hasn't really had a public vetting yet.
Yeah.
So what's the
Coming right up.
debut for that?
So in the next week or two, I can't remember the exact date, some key external stakeholders, such as folks you could think of as example, Apano, SCI, those groups will be brought in for kind of an initial vetting of this. But as I said, as it moves forward, we will continuously engage these communities, and especially as we get to those optional components.
What about just parents and
That
at large?
comes right next after that. Actually, it's in the same window. We're not changing the document. We're creating a draft of it that will go to all those groups before we then redraft it again.
I imagine we'll have it up on our website.
Yep.
We'll have something that people can comment there.
So I can speak to some communication pieces. First, we've taken all the work from November 2014 and put it up on the OTO website. And we have some suggestions to tweak it, but we're going to make it more user-friendly. And then we put two other pieces, or three other pieces in place. We're going to have weekly updates, which I intend to note what we've done for the week and then what we hope to accomplish in the next week or two. And that'll be out every Friday in the same website space. Once we get the seminal documents finished in a kind of more condensed version, that'll be up on the website. And then when we finalize the workflow for it and timelines associated, we will have that up on the website as well. And again, all that at the end of February is the plan.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Yes. Chris, it's very disappointing to see the DLI plan pushed on for another year. Is there any way to speed that up? It's going to be very, very difficult for DRAC to be able to make any recommendations on East Side school boundaries and configuration when we don't have that plan for those schools.
So I don't think any of the recommendations are followed just yet.
We're real close.
Yeah.
We talked about it just yesterday, right?
Yeah. So
Sorry, Paul, is it on the list of things that are put off for 17, 18?
Yeah, because
Yes.
we just did,
Okay, so
Yeah,
I think that's a mistake. There are
Oh, good.
some recommendations that'll be coming to teaching and
we
learning
just
on
we just had that
February 8th.
conversation yesterday.
So I apologize for
Reports,
that.
actually.
Okay, thank you. The day just got much better.
Because it's also, but it also shows up right under middle school where we were just talking about as in progress and.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, sorry,
Okay.
yes, sorry.
Well, again, it's a working document and, you know, we're working.
Okay.
So if I can speak generally, we've done
Okay.
feasibility studies, or excuse me, we've done the analysis with initial recommendations. We've done a feasibility study, is it possible? Kind of tweak those recommendations and we present them to direct reports and then tend to present to teaching and learning.
So then it goes, excuse me, then it goes to the board to decide what is implemented after teaching and learning what happens.
I think it might be a superintendent's decision. I can tell you that we're not gonna fool around with this. We're gonna move pretty quickly. There's some that are out there in terms of implementation over the course of some time, and there's some that are much more immediate. And we'll be clear about those.
And we're closely tying in with DBRA.
Good.
Amanda, do you want to tell us that Ed Options Review pushback is an accident too?
So you're going to be getting an update, you'll be getting an update again in March from, on the Ed Options discussion that's happened so far. And at that point, I think there will need to be a discussion about what else happens this year.
Yeah, and I can give you a little more insight into that as well. What we've done is an Ed Options triage with the idea in mind that some decisions need to be made for DBRAC prior to a thorough analysis of each of the programs. What we have right now is quite a nice thorough inventory of the programs that are out there, and there's quite a lot of them. But there are some specific ones that are problematic if they're not resolved for the DBRAC process, and it's those programs we've taken a look at, and we're in the process of making some decisions about what to do about them, and we have been working on that. So, I just haven't changed the language, but again, it's sort of a Ed Options triage with that in mind, that down the line we'll have to try to analyze quality of the program rather than just where it should reside. Paul, does that help?
Oh, yeah.
If there's no more questions on that, I would like him to stay here and essentially talk about literacy adoptions.
Okay, so let's start with pre-K 5, language arts adoption.
Okay. What page is it on?
That's on page 6 of 16. We have implemented in 10 schools this year, and we're preparing for expansion, another 10 next year. In this rollout, will include rollout, PD, assessment tools, core program, word study, and tier 2 supports. And it also includes training and development of literacy coaches to support those specific schools. So what happened is we have our guided independent readers in the school, we have a base curriculum in the 10 schools. Words Their Way, our science-based program, Project Read, materials have also been distributed, and that'll be a tier 2 piece. Book rooms are identified and installed. If you get a chance, and if you're in the building, take a look at the book rooms. They're truly impressive. It's a kind of work of art how they have organized them. Teachers at the 10 schools, they've completed initial training in the following departments in equity-based literacy. Guided reading, units of study, Work Their Way, and Project Read. That has been completed, so consider that like the first blush. What's ongoing is there's continuous PD and tweaking of the program, and it's primarily delivered to the literacy coaches, which are embedded in each of those programs. We're beginning the use of the assessment tool, which will be great because we'll be able to give you more detailed kind of input as to how students are progressing in their literacy skills. And that'll be in all buildings by March 1st. Demonstration classrooms, how it looks to use this curriculum and do it. Those visits begin February 3rd. And then the pre-K and BLI pilots are going to be completed by March 24th. So what is different about this is we're going to look at the whole system and try to bring it all online at the same time, i.e. DLL, SPED, BLI. For 612, that adoption.
Wait, can we stay there for a second, elementary? So when do we get some data back about the assessment of the effectiveness of the adoption this year that will help us with the, go ahead on the expansion of the adoption?
So I'll let you know that we did hire an independent auditor or a third-party evaluation company to do a comprehensive review of our both qualitative and quantitative elements of the program. The end of the first year, we'll have a summation of a lot of that information, again, both qualitative and quantitative. But what we currently have in terms of measures, we have our mid-winter DIBEL scores, we have our fall DIBEL scores to compare to. We do have some surveys that are coming out that can speak to the qualitative elements. So that will begin to trickle in. We've had some initial conversations. What can we peel off and give us snapshots? But again, according to the evaluation, the third-party evaluator, there's going to be a comprehensive review, kind of a more complete package. So a lot of it is underway. It's not complete, but there'll still be looks and snapshots as to how things are going.
And will we add new schools next year?
Yep. Well, that's
The
plan.
full rollout would be next year?
So our plan, and a lot of it's contingent on budget, is to roll out an additional 10 schools, 5 of which are going to be TechSmart for the blended learning kind of flavor of it. We have those schools identified both for TechSmart and for non-TechSmart. And so we're ready to pull the trigger and kind of get all things moving. So that's our intent, additional 10 schools for next year, which would be 20 that we have on there. We have tweaked the plan, the original rollout plan to perhaps go district-wide with the assessment tool. And we're seeing if we have the bandwidth to do so, but we're looking at tweaking certain elements to go more district-wide.
What's your anecdotal lowdown?
But like it as well.
Kids learning to read?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I get out into the buildings, I got out a good deal in the fall and early winter. From the way the program is set up, when you go into the book room, to the things that you see in the classroom, to the lessons themselves, I'm thoroughly impressed. And I think the thing that stands out to me is where it's going really well, and you have absolute teacher buy-in. It's really exciting because you see the kids engaging at all different levels, and they're all participating. And it's something that I couldn't say I saw with consistency before. But in the schools that are implementing, I am seeing that with levels of consistency, and I'm hearing overwhelmingly positive pieces. There's some other feedback that because there are 5 moving pieces and they kind of work in concert with one another, that sometimes it's overwhelming, and that's that more so speaks to the need of the coach who's being in there trying to tweak and calibrate those pieces so that they work better in concert with one another. So that that would be a challenge that I would have anticipated. So for the secondary.
Wait, hold on. Steve has a question.
So we did 10 and then we're gonna do 10 more? How many schools we got? 60?
56.
56, so it's gonna be 6 years before we get to it?
I would hope not.
How come we're only doing 10 this year, and did we choose the, how did we choose the 10? Maybe the text mark, but that doesn't really tell me, because I'm not familiar enough with it. How did we choose the 10? I mean, we got serious problems, we all know that, on our reading, and scores are not anywhere near what they should be. Of course, it's kind of hard to judge whether they are or not, using this factor, which is worthless for this, but how do we choose those 10? I mean, shouldn't we be choosing the 10 that are the farthest behind now? Since this is our plan to improve the reading, right? I mean, we're not hiring, well, we laid off 72 reading teachers and we put back 6 in the last few years. So we're not hiring reading teachers. But this is our plan, yeah. What do you want to do? Can you give me a straight answer, though?
Yeah.
You know what, I mean, you usually do. I
So we have an
appreciate
application
straight up,
process.
yeah, straight up.
And the application process has certain criteria that they need to answer, or that we are looking for. And some of those criteria I can speak anecdotally to is we're looking for broad representation across the district. We're looking for both high-need school and not high-need school. And some of that has to do with, as we're evaluating the progress of this, we want to see it have a holistic way, how it's landing, how it's impacting. But there's an application process that OSB and TL collaboratively work on. And from there, there's a kind of scoring rubric where schools are selected as they score out of that.
And the reason we're not doing more is just money. If we had more money, then we could do more. What would it cost to do for 30 more schools, so a total of 40 for next year?
So I couldn't exactly price out 30, but what I can tell you is what I spoke to in 2014. What my department believes the need is for a curriculum and instruction budget to roll out a curriculum comprehensively, pre-K through 12.
$7.5 million.
$7.5 million to $9 million.
And there's 56 schools left?
After 20, it'll be 36.
36 schools, well, after, so there's 46 schools and there's $7.5 million. That's about,
So there's some recycling existing resources, so you don't keep them indefinitely in there. So like staffing, you move them on into the next set of schools. But I could, again, when I did that initial analysis, we looked across the country for like schools, found out what that cost per pupil was to take care of an adoption, did the low end and did the high end, and I feel pretty confident in that number. So.
well, I don't see, this is not you're not setting the budget, the superintendent is. I don't see why, this isn't our number one thing. Teaching children to read should be our number one priority in this school system, period, if we have a lot of children who aren't learning to read well enough. And so I would think $7.5 million, and we do about $10 million worth of contracted services out for educational, general education. There's leaving $2.5 million for the contract, take $7.5 million, and let's teach all those kids to read who can't. This is our plan. If our plans put in reading teachers, which would be another plan, then we should be doing that. But this is our plan. And either we believe in it or we don't. And if we believe in it, then we should be taking money from all sorts of other sources and moving them in. In my opinion, this should be our number one priority. And we certainly should go out and 40 schools. And then another year, in 2 years, we should have it completed. I mean, for historically, for years and years in public schools, everybody did all the reading books in 1 year. Basically, they did 3 or 4 schools sometimes, then all the reading books in 1 year. Everybody did their adoptions in 1 year, and we're saying we can't afford to do that anymore in the biggest city in this state of Oregon. For me, and I know you and I have discussed this, so I know you would be willing to do it if we had the money. And I just think we should think about doing more than we're doing.
Well,
I basically agree with Amy.
Yeah, let me talk about, this is a question I have as well, about K-12 curriculum in Portland Public Schools, and, you know, there is an issue here across the board with respect to curriculum. And, you know, certainly I've asked Chris, okay, you know, it seems like we're not rolling this out quickly enough. What's it gonna take? That's a conversation that we are having. And so I want you to know that, yes, we're paying attention to it. That's number one. Number two, this is far more than just textbooks. This is teaching teachers and making sure that there's some fidelity in terms of the way that they go about doing it. You know, whether or not there's a capacity issue there with respect to coaches is a question, but certainly you're right that more money in this area would be helpful. You know, in a tight budget, that could be problematic, and you know, again, this is something that I agree with you, but where we get the money from may be a different matter, but that is yet to be determined.
And it will be part of the budget discussion, but point
And if it comes in not in the budget, then it's very hard to get the school board to put it in the budget. It's a difficult
Yeah.
process. But I would just like to say, if you're cutting down on your budget for your family budget, and you're starting to get tight, you may turn the heat down, but you don't starve the kids. And in a way, this is our it's our second greatest need probably in Portland maybe right now, is making sure that we're teaching all our children to read, that we can teach to read. And I just think we need to go at it stronger than and think more about it than we are. We kind of accepted this idea. We did a pilot program. We didn't originally have a plan to do a pilot program. Pilot was something we came upon because we were supposedly short of money last year when we really weren't short of money. $7.5 million, I identified that in the spring. 7.5 would have done the whole thing. So I just think we need to think stronger about maybe doing it more than we are.
So
That's
the
all.
full rollout cost is $7.5 million?
It would cost $7.5 million,
To do
theoretically, to roll out the whole district.
So where that number came from, again, is what like-sized districts do to roll that out and sustain it per pupil allocation, and compare it both in the metro area and national, and that's the estimate.
So it would be nice to see in the budget process, full implementation, more modest
More
implementation. that you're
quickly than
considering.
what we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See both.
And another piece you'll see soon is a kind of a 10-year look out of what the curriculum needs are and what those cycles of building that curriculum look like.
And I appreciate that because it's something that I've asked for as an old curriculum instruction guy. I'd like to see a cycle here, I'd like to see a plan, and it'd be something that my successor can take a look at and hopefully decide whether or not, you know, they want to address what I think is one of the greatest issues of the district, which is a comprehensive K-12 curriculum.
All right, we've got about 15 minutes to go. Go ahead, Steve.
Get your kids into first grade and they can't read, and our plan is to get this curriculum in place, and it's going to be our solution to teaching your child to read. You really don't want to wait till they're in the 5th grade to start figuring it out. You'd like to have it right away. I just think parents would think like that, and so would all the constituents of the people in the school would think like that.
Thank you, Chris.
So, I don't know where we're going next, but we haven't like gone through metric by metric. So here, under create a system of quality instruction, that's all you, so are we gonna be able to get to all of the things on that, under that metric?
Well, basically, the whole thing here is, I just wanted to spot this, these individual spots, because it was too much really to do in one time, so, you know, if you have questions, we're at a place now where I've reached the ones that I wanted to highlight, and if you have questions, or, you know, well, this is a good time to ask.
I like to hear about the multi-tiered system of support. Just you and Antonio and Lorenzo and Frank and
Okay,
Josh, I guess you're on there.
You guys want to tag team it and go through it? Rick's up there.
On that.
start?
Where are we?
Page 7.
I know
Oh, where are we in terms of our progress?
Yeah.
Okay. As far as PBIS this year, according to the MOA, we're focusing on all schools, specifically around Tier 1. We have 82 schools who are actively implementing Tier 1 as measured by a nationally adopted PBIS implementation tool, which is also addressed in the MOA called the Culture Responsive Tiered Fidelity Inventory. So we partner with the National Technical Assistance Center on PBIS on how to use that tool, and all of our climatoses are trained in that. So we have schools at various levels of implementation. Antonio has set a goal that all schools reach 80% implementation at Tier 1 as measured by this TFI by May of this year. So that's happening. Additionally, we also provide schools Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports around PBIS systems and practices as they're ready.
What does that mean? Like, what kind of supports?
Around Tier 2 and Tier 3?
Yeah, I mean, for the schools themselves in terms of,
So
how do you help them help their kids?
So Tier 2 around, we call the student intervention team, which that Tier 2 team, as students reach a level of need, right? We set cut points or indicators with schools based on academic behavior and attendance. That student intervention team then we train this team, the schools, on how to organize that team so that they are watching the data to pick up those indicators. And then as they pick up those indicators, teams develop specific interventions that they deliver to the students based on the student need. So some of those interventions, and we partner with both special ed, student services, and OTL around the various, academic, behavioral, or social emotional supports. We specifically provide training in social emotional behavior supports. One of the specific ones that we start schools off is, it's called check-in, check-out. It's a behavior feedback process that's been researched and shown to be incredibly effective. So that's where students are provided feedback on how they're doing, meeting the expectations throughout the day. It shows that it increases positive attention towards students, and then there's built-in implementation and student progress monitoring along with that. Another one is called meaningful work, where the student's profile matches, and we match the need of the student to the intervention. So this meaningful work intervention, students are provided additional attention and leadership opportunities in the classroom and throughout the school. Another one that we do is called Breaks Are Better. So the students are developing self-regulation and relaxation skills. We develop those. These are all classroom-based interventions, so they're delivered in the classrooms. Teachers are supported by counselors or student intervention or student management specialists or student climate support staff to do this work. We also provide support around restorative interventions at both Tier 2, restorative mediation is the bulk of that, and peer mediation programs in schools.
So can I jump in? So one of the things that we wanna make sure is how do we know the systems are in place, right? In terms of what are the expectations that we have for the students, and how are our students being taught about those expectations, right? Because one of the things that we hear about in the schools is that expectations are not clearly articulated. Kids, they have different expectations in different classrooms, or they're not taught like, okay, this is when we work, when we walk in the hallways, right? This is teaching the kids the expectations, so that way they know, right? And so how do we clarify what are the systems that schools have in place? Because in the absence of systems, you're gonna have kids getting mixed messages, right? And you're gonna have inconsistencies, right? And when one teacher does something and another teacher does totally different in terms of the consequences, but that behavior is the same. So how do we create those systems, right? And one of the things that we have made really clear is that it's really important, and we're working with PAP, is how do we develop those systems where there is clarity. If I'm a teacher and I refer a student to the office, right, it has to be for something that is not just because their kid asking for a pencil, right? That it has to be really clear about when do you send a student to the office, and for teachers to be clear what is going to happen when I send a student, right? And then one of the things is how do we communicate also to the parents when, you know, so we're trying to align what are the systems that we need to have in place in order for the school to function effectively. In the absence of those systems, you have a bunch of interventions and that are inconsistent. So what we're trying to do this with the MTSS is how do we, when a school is blowing up or a school is having challenges, is how do we go to the school and assess our systems in place? Because if you don't have a good school climate plan in place, right, you're gonna be allocating resources, but the problem doesn't get resolved, right? So what we're trying to do in this is how do we identify the systems that are foundational, and then what are the areas in which the system with what it's doing is not enough, right? How do we, for example, look at understanding some of the challenges that our students come with, you know, how the trauma informed, right? And how do we also, we might have traumatized adults too, right? And so how do we look at the different factors that contribute for a student not being successful and a teacher not being successful and a school not being successful because systems are not well articulated on that. Part of that, what we're trying to do with the MTSS is also develop that early warning systems, right? Because we need to have some markers to say, as soon as Antonio has high absenteeism, well, let's find out why Antonio has high absenteeism, right? And, you know, it may be because Antonio has to babysit because he has younger brothers and sisters when mom is working, or Antonio, you know, doesn't have shoes, or, you know, all these things that we're trying to understand better and to have some markers that guide a set of actions that we need to put in place to create that success that we want to see. So we are looking like, so we're working in how to systematize foundational systems that they need to be in place. That's why when Rick was talking about it, that I made it very clear to the schools. By the end of this year, you're gonna be at 80% of the compliance in terms of on the school climate plan, the elements. And there are, 7 elements in terms of, like, you gotta have a team that works on analyzing data. You know, if we have, like, for example, we have a lot of referrals that kids are fighting in the hallway or something, so this is data that can give us indication that maybe we need to come back and reteach those skills or figure out how those skills integrate. So what I say is that by the end of the year, those systems have to be in place. So does that answer your question?
I'll just add a brief one. The academic side of the house has been inconsistent, either inconsistent, underdeveloped, or non-existent, and that's pre-K through 8. So specific to curriculum and instruction, we have hired an MTSS coordinator with a specific task by the end of the year for both math and reading to identify tier 1, tier 2, tier 3s, and what are the fresh ones, and what are the first blush of intervention or supports we have academically. The climate side is more developed, and they actually have some foundations. Academic, again, is either been inconsistent.
But there are also, these two are connected, because part of that, if you're not engaged in the classroom, right, if the lessons are not engaging, right, if you don't see yourself in there, or, you know, or that relationship doesn't exist in the classroom, so these two are connected. right? We know that kids behave in certain ways because there are some indicators that trigger certain behaviors, right? And there are others where we need to understand what kids come with, right? There are some kids that come with, if they come oozing with distress to school because of a variety of, so how do we understand and acknowledge that kids show up the way they show up, and we need to have systems in place to prepare them to be ready to learn. And if you're in a fight or flight mode coming to school because, let's say my parents were fighting in school, there has to be a way that the school knows, what I'm saying, that I'm stressed, and what are the things that we can do in the school to better connect with our students and understand what they come with, not blaming them, but how to help them. And that's why these systems become really important to have in place, so that the school doesn't become one of those more triggers that you develop post-traumatic stress.
Are we using that response team that we bargained on?
Yes, we are.
Good.
We are, it's not what it should be, but, we
Not
have,
using it as much as we should.
it needs to be made stronger, right, in terms of, the reason it didn't get to that point is because we were late in the hiring. There were some positions that are hard to hire for that specific.
Why are we only at 80% by the end of the year? Why are we at 100%?
Because 80, you can talk about the 80%, what it means.
The research shows us that when schools reach that 80% mark, now they're in a position to actually do the rest of the 20%, which they move from implementation to now problem solving and solution building. So that's the next chunk that they take on as they continue to then move forward indefinitely. So
They're not smart enough to do it without the feedback.
Pardon?
They're not smart enough to do it without the feedback, our principals?
The
They can't
feedback-
just, they have to wait for some reason in order to take on their problem, in order to sit down and discuss and work on their problems. It takes a period of time to wait. Shouldn't they be doing that tomorrow?
I don't know if it's not that stringent. They're doing it as they learn, they're learning and implementing the tools so they can do it. So it's happening at the same time, but we know by 80%, then they've reached where now they understand and they're really doing it at a deeper level. So it's happening at the same time.
Do you have the tools, or the tools written down somewhere?
Yes.
Get somebody to make a copy.
We can say you that, and what are the elements, because this is a team approach, right? And when you reach 80%, that means that you have your systems, the main components of your systems are in place. And the 20% is that refining how you make it highly effective.
So Chris, in the identification and the interventions you're talking about on the strictly in the academics, that's K-8?
Pre-K through eight.
And so ideally, teachers and principals will be able to see at the building level, if X, then Y. If these are the warning flags in terms of kids struggling in math or reading, these are the interventions available to you at the building level. These are the supports you should implement, these are the supports that you can access.
For the academic side. And that marries well with the climate side. So often there's a combination of factors, but our side of the triangle has been, again, kind of inconsistent in this, I guess.
I think to your credit for the last 3 years, this board has put significant resources in building the foundational piece on the climate side. So quite naturally, the climate side will be part of it, more developed than the instructional side, and that's what we're attempting to do to get that caught up. So that all the principals, all the schools will have the same foundational piece, plus all the tools and services needed to approach the problem that they're seeing in the school. So that's the work that we continue to try to do.
And it's pretty typical for schools to start that way too, with the climate side first. Any other questions on that one?
I got 5 comments and they're very short.
Go.
One, the strong principal thing. Did we do a survey last year?
We did not.
We did that too.
We did we put it together about 3 years ago.
Right, so we did it,
Survey.
we did it 2 years ago, we got the results in the spring, I believe, and so the idea was that we took a year. We wanted to reset the timing so that we were providing it to families at parent-teacher conferences, so that happened this fall, and we've got, I mean, as you can see, the rest of the surveys are opening this fall. Last year was also the TEL survey year, so it was a lot of surveys to do.
Just on the strong principle thing, I don't see us doing, there's stuff that actually that were pretty good that we did that's not on here. So, for strong principles, so I don't know. The undocumented students thing, I assume that's coming back or something.
It's done, I have it.
And then, good,
Well,
that's
we'd like
last
to
one.
see.
You mentioned those,
Yes, and I can get you copies.
I knew I should have put that on.
And so I have
It
it, I
is.
can show you
It's on.
how it's laid out, and I reviewed
Yeah,
it.
what,
And how will we communicate that from?
So what we're doing is on Thursday, we have leadership, that's when we meet with all the principals, right? And we go over and what is the process, let's say that there is a rate in the community, and as soon as we find out there are some processes, because, you know, coming here when I was, about 10, 11 years ago, I was the principal of Clarendon, and there was a rate of the money, and I had like about 30 parents that were detained, right? So, you know, there were at that time, there were no protocols, and, you know, it's just like, so anyway, the way it is structured is that it doesn't have to be somebody coming to the school, but how is the impact that it has in the community, and when the kids find out that the parents are detained. So we have a plan in terms of how do we create safe spaces for kids to do. So anyway, so I can bring you and walk you through. It's ready. But going back to what I was saying, on Thursday, we're going to present it to the principals, right? And then they have, I think, a week to present it to their staffs, so that way they know. And we're developing that plan of how to present it to the community. And we're thinking about using some of the community-based organizations to help us, that we can co-present. Right, so if you give me 2 minutes, I can get you those copies and I can walk you through if you want.
you don't need to, you can send them.
Yeah.
I can send it to
Given
you.
And
given
last-
the current state of affairs, we need
Yeah.
to communicate to our community sooner rather than.
Yeah, Barbara Megan had a pretty good letter that she sent us today, email, had a pretty good list of some stuff that she thought was good information to communicate.
I think that you will be really happy, because it aligns not only for this, but specifically for this situation, but other situations that is a consistent response. And like, you know what, like if there is a situation like that, who do we send to the schools? Counselors, translators, you know, so it names it. So I think you'll be pleased with what we can do.
Good. Okay, last question for me then, Tom. We've got it's more a comment. We have an early warning system we're kind of putting together. The state's putting together an early warning system. We got a hub information stuff that we're moving and putting together. We got the TAM that we're doing out of the HR department. All this stuff is scary, and we need somebody who understands the difficulties that you can come into with this type of information, particularly like the TAM, and understand so we don't misuse these databases that we're creating. And I don't see anybody who's sitting down and saying, yeah, this is a problem, we need to make sure we don't misuse the TAM, for instance, because those things can be incredibly misused. Wrong algorithms, you can end up with people being treated horribly, and it's almost always poor people of color, who are getting screwed in those databases and the algorithms that go in there. And we don't want to do that in our school system. We don't want to create those problems for people. But I don't see anybody who's saying, okay, we're going to make sure that doesn't take place. And we need to have somebody who's on top of that, who understands it, has some understanding, in my opinion, to do that. Otherwise, we just keep having people push at us. And we're gonna do some things that are gonna hurt a lot of people, and we're not even gonna know that we did it.
So just, no, I thought I'd say just to let you know, which is a compliment to the work that you have done, is this resolution, we get it with requests nationwide in terms of how the board passed this resolution and what are the systems that you have in place. And I really appreciate the message that Bob sent yesterday to the community based on what is going on, because our community is under high stress. So, so anyway, this is something that we should be really proud of you guys, doing this resolution. Just to let you know that I have about 5 or 6 requests nationwide. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, I don't know what the timeline is.
So
The timeline is, unless somebody has, but so we have one more
Vincent.
agenda item.
Yeah.
But it sounds like Mike has something.
I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't
Yes.
see you.
No, so on the ADA transition plan, so I think it's great that you're gonna update it, but it says it's in progress. What's the schedule to complete that? Or when will it be done, the updated transition plan?
Who wants to speak to the meeting aid plan? Jerry, is that you?
No, that would be
Courtney.
Courtney, I'm sorry.
Yeah, to be honest, we don't really have it figured out, Mike. I think we have an understanding that the plan is outdated, and also an acknowledgement that we probably need to update it. And then we also need to talk about what significant progress is, and there's a bit of a difference in opinion as to what that is, and we need to sort that out through the bond process. We can do that. Well, I think through their bond process, in terms of that, figuring out what is the allocation for all the other items. And it's challenging, there's a lot of needs and trade-offs amongst those that are competing for a fix and apple. Somehow having that position, which I think is challenging. So, I was dedicated to working on it, and I think, as part of this, we need to get some advice, not to, some legal advice, just because it's very technical, and it's, not to avoid responsibilities, but to understand, what does the law require, and then ultimately the board can decide to, set the funding level at what the law requires, or something different. I mean, it's totally your call, but, there's still work to be done on this, and I guess that's the message I want to send, and also that we're willing to work on.
So it seems like, so I appreciate that. I mean, it seems like we ought to be able to say, we're gonna update the transition
Yeah.
plan
Yeah.
by a certain date, and it's relevant to the current, it's relevant to the bond. So, I mean, I appreciate that it's on the,
Well, and also that as part of the budget process, tell us what it's gonna cost to actually get us an updated plan that is our roadmap over the next 10 or 20 years.
I think one of the tensions now is not so much how much you're proposing to spend on ADA, but, when we're gonna get to how we get this long bond horizon, how do we chop that up for, and so I think that's what's feeding the transition. That's an essential element.
Yeah, is that something that it's,
I think
we're
so,
sitting here
you know,
thinking that can get delivered, but.
Yeah, I think she has a fear we're going to just say, yeah, we'll get to it, and then we never will, which is partly what's the problem. Yeah, I tell you, our fear is kind of the flip side, which is we commit to a specific funding schedule, and then we end up with no funding to pay for it, and we get locked into this fine. And I think what we can do is tie it to this plan we have, which I think is fairly doable. Once, you've seen it, once we get up to this level, we're gonna stay there, and I think future bonds are gonna be easier to pass because they're, roughly revenue neutral. So I think we can commit to a funding schedule, assuming bonds pass, but I think we don't wanna commit to a funding schedule that's not tied to bonds, because that's how we're gonna pay for it.
That's
But
fine, that's in the plan,
I
but we
think-
need a plan.
Yeah, I think we can have a plan that doesn't have a commitment to a specific dollar amount and a schedule for improvements, but it just says this is what we need to get done and this is what we're looking at. And that apparently is part of the law, which is that you have to have a board-approved plan in place that tells you where you're going.
Absent that plan, it feels like assigning money for the bond is just pulling figures out of the air. They don't have anything to hang on without a plan.
Yeah.
Well, we
Okay.
have an allocation in the bond, and so I mean, there is a commitment there.
It's a priority too, not just.
But then,
And there has been work done. I mean, I don't want you to think that we
Yeah.
haven't done, we have.
Right,
We
and
just
the,
have.
right, and the gaps. I think it's the uncertainty and having a transition plan done. We need to start that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can work something out. I do. It's just when, you know, she's frustrated, right, and I understand that, and yet we need to protect ourselves too. So I think there's a middle ground there.
okay. I'd like to move to the next topic.
Wait, I just-
Sure, could I just?
One more.
Go ahead.
Did you want to say something?
No, if you have a question, I was just gonna have just a follow-up comment to the whole thing, the whole topic.
Oh, to the ADA one?
No, no, just the whole.
Oh, the whole one. So it looks like the risk assessment, the review of the risk assessment's been
Yep.
delayed.
Yep.
So when it says, so that means it's going to be a priority for the 17, 18.
I'll let Yusuf speak to that.
Yes, that'll be accurate. I mean, in effect, we have been addressing a lot of the things
Some
that
of it.
are in the assessment. Some of it are coming through the audit, and some of it are coming through our environmental health and safety and the work that we've been doing on that end. So,
There are other big chunks missing.
yeah, I mean, there is a lot to do in 1 year. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, we just looked at it that way. We prioritize health and safety because there's just so much work in there. And then the same player who would be working on the assessment would be working on the health and safety.
So I just want to know it's a priority for.
It is a priority, definitely,
Okay.
for next year.
That was it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, thank the board for your patience in all of this. And more importantly, I want to thank my staff for the work that they've done and make sure that they thank their staff. There's a tremendous amount of work taking place in the district. I feel it's a bit more focused perhaps than it was in the past. I'll let others judge that. And I'm pleased with the progress that we've made, and we're working really hard to make the next 5 months that I'm here very productive, and to lay the foundation for whoever is the person who follows me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you all
And
very,
thank you
very
all the
much.
staff.
Yeah. And then just, we did talk about, and you can come back with this, but some sort of just schedule, reporting back schedule on.
Yeah, I mean,
So the metrics that you have, do you have up until, I think, even September 2017, times when they're gonna be coming back?
Okay.
So I think it is on,
But is it
Yeah.
like quarterly or?
it depended,
we just-
I mean, I think we set it, so when we set the metrics in those committee meetings, we did it based, we made agreement based on what the metric was for how often it would be coming. So, something like principal moves can only come once a year, so, I mean, I think it depended on what it was.
But that still leaves us without a schedule to report back. Why couldn't we have quarterly reports? I mean, you're collecting
And some are
data
gonna be,
continuously.
So we could have one we could set one up for the end of the year. I mean, one of the things that Yusuf and I have been talking about is, as the new senior director for SPP is brought on, how do we lay these out in a way that's more clear too? But yes, so we can have one at the end of the year, which would be almost quarterly, yeah.
Okay, so I think, yeah, we should come up with some regular reporting period, and then the ones that we have data on, we report,
Yeah.
And just a lot of those did go to committees on those regular times, but I think you're asking for a full board work session on it, which is great.
yeah.
Mr. Vincent, this way.
As far as the bond goes, we report to you quarterly, but I haven't, and therefore it meets our metric because I give you an update on the bond, but I don't tie that together. So that'd be a thought for the bond part of it is we already give you that quarterly update. So we can tie how that metric's doing at that point in time for us if you like it.
one of the values of this exercise is that everybody gets to see everything, which helps the team understand what each other's doing. as well as inform you. So the next item is next in the, and then Cobra will be going to report.
All right, so, last week, I gave you, and I think I talked to you, most of you, about our recommendation for fencing, right? And you have, and we're recommending for 18-19 to put a cap in terms of the 9th graders coming to Benson to 300. Right, and in the plan that was done on December 15, it was for Benson recommended enrollment of 9th graders from 275 to 300 in 2016 and 365 in 2017-18. So we're on target in terms of what we said those goals, right? And right now, Benson has enrolled 292 students, even though we set that cap for this year to 300, right? And it came out at 292. There were, in the lottery, there were 473 applicants. But, you know, when we start calling the other students that were in the pool, anyway, some of them have made other choices. So what we're recommending is that for this coming year, that due to the uncertainties in terms of the school improvement bond, that it's a enrollment balancing process, and you know, figure out where Alliance is gonna be because of those uncertainties. That for this coming year, we'll leave it at 300. Like I say, in this year, we open it and we got a little less than 300 to 92. So based on those uncertainties, that it will help us in terms of once we have more clarity in terms of these other issues. So anyway, that's the recommendation that we're making. Okay. Everybody so far, at least in this year, when the target is 200. 300 has been able to get in. So that is the recommendation.
What do you mean everybody's been able to get in?
Well, it's we have right now, we have 209 graders, 292, right? And the target for 2016-17 was 300, and for 17-18, it's supposed to be, yes. So is that for this coming year, we just leave it at the way it is, 300.
And reevaluate based upon if the bond passes,
Right.
these other
Exactly.
uncertainties.
Yes.
Exactly.
It is just the many uncertainties that we have is that for this year, let's just stay with the 300 and reevaluate what, Tom, what you're saying is, and go from there.
It's a significant consideration in terms of the staging of the construction.
Sure is, yes.
How many kids are there?
Yeah.
Don't think
So no, procedurally, if the superintendent is who sets the number of slots, but this had been an issue that had come up through a resolution of the board, and we presented a plan, so this is a change to the plan. I think what Antonio is doing is presenting our current plan for 2017-18 school year.
All right. Thank you. Any
Have at it, Bob.
Well, I'm not hearing
questions or
objections.
comments?
Bill, I certainly don't favor this. And I'd ask some somewhat rhetorical questions here. We know we don't need to move Alliance out in order to get those additional 65 students in. And I'm very disappointed to see on page 5 of the metrics that we aren't going to be moving PISA out because, first, the PISA move would free up enough space for those 65 students. And also, a nice man right over there has been going on and on for the last 3 years about how PISA needs to be moved out of Benson because it does not serve the community it needs to serve there anything close to the need. That PISA cannot grow at Benson. And also, it's very geographically removed from where the communities that use PISA live. And besides just the sheer physical transportation difficulties, there are significant cultural differences that make it very, very difficult for them to access Benson. And I know that Steve has been promised numerous times over the last 3 years that PISA would be being moved. So if you're recommending that PISA not be moved, what is it that you expect to do in the next year that hasn't been done in the last 3?
Because
As
don't you
a
have a
rhetorical
broader
question.
evaluation of PISA anyway?
What 65 students are you talking about? I'm not listening.
It's not, it's just 325, it's
So,
365.
so for, the way that in 2015, the way it was laid out for growing Benson was that for 200, for the year 2016-17, that it goes to 300, right? Right now, we only have 292 income. We're talking about incoming 9th graders, right? So we didn't even reach the 300. We had in the lottery, when it opened with 473 applicants. By the time the lottery opened and the school started, we only got 292 students. Then the goal for 17-18, which is the next year, is for Benson to be at 365. 365. Right, and what we're saying is for 2017-18, how about our recommendation is, because all these things that we don't know how it's gonna end up, is to leave it at 300, even though we don't reach that target in this year when it was at 300, because we're still like 8 students short. So I totally understand what you're asking.
Antonio, I do have to break in and say, as you are talking, both in your memo and here, about the 292 students, 8 short of what the cap was supposed to be, that's not the fault of Benson at all, and it's not for a lack of willingness for students to want to come to Benson. We're turning away students from Benson by the hundreds. It's with the enrollment and transfer process, getting them into Benson, and how long that takes, and what accommodations and compromises families have to make during that time. That certainly is not something that's Benson's fault. I could bring
Meaning there's a
many
way
people
to-
to testify to that. But Chris, you were going to speak to PISA.
Yeah, and so you have our apologies, the presentation would have come before the Teaching and Learning Committee, had it not been for the snow days, so just kind of bumped up. So we did an analysis of programs, kind of got two pieces, the effectiveness of the current model, and then what is the need, should we replicate it? So we've kind of addressed both in the analysis and kind of program redesign. So I can't speak specifically to where those locations are, but we've proposed a model where there are 3 different iterations of PISA out there that serves as hubs for specific communities. And also, we've kind of changed the program so that the kids are better served and they have greater access to different educational opportunities. We've named some possible locations. We've run it by facilities, FAM, so we have an idea. As I understand even the conversations about moving it is a lot on the plate. And all of these pieces, whether you move PISA or whether you move something else, that has a domino effect. So it's managing what we have. It wasn't not to move it eventually. Actually, that's in our interest. We express that as an interest. It's just right now, the timing didn't line up with how much is on the plate and then how much that you can't isolate the move from our vantage point without having impact on other things.
going to have $500,000 laid in our budget this year for library books?
How much?
500,000 minimum for library books this year. Are we guaranteeing that?
I can't guarantee anything.
Yeah, and it was a question that was brought up when I was arguing the library books last year. That was the thing that was kept being thrown back at me, which was the library books. Next year we'll have a system that will work. Well, and I have extremely good faith in Mr. Rousseau's approach and his intelligence about these things. There's no getting around that. But we've been messing with this. This is our #1 educational problem in the entire school district. This is shameful. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. It's by far the worst that we take children who come in from foreign countries and we drop them in the middle of a physics class with no understanding of even speaking English. But we just drop them in and we give them 22 minutes a day, maybe, of ESL. We're not serving those children, and the reason that we haven't served them in the past in a lot of the areas, and we're beginning to think about it finally, which is wonderful. Since Chris has been here, he's been thinking about it a lot, I know. But the reason they don't have a group of people who are lobbying for them. Those children are not being lobbied for, they're just being screwed. We drop them into those classes and they don't know anything. The first year I was here, I went in and talked to the person who was our ESL director, and I was told, you don't understand language acquisition, Mr. Buell. You don't understand language acquisition. Well, these children are getting had day in and day out, every day. They should be our really #1 top priority. When I said about the reading thing, I said it was our #2 priority. You know, and really we talked about our #3, which is the disciplinary problems in the school district. Those are 1, 2, 3. And the worst one, the one where we are shafting child after child after child, is the pizza program. Because we're not expanding it. So the question is, when are we going to do it? We didn't do it. I don't want to do it next year. I want to do it this coming year.
Chris,
Is that enough?
you
We've done it.
plan
There we
to
go.
come to the teaching and learning.
And you didn't bring teaching and learning, we can argue, but in teaching and learning, I'm not sure the teaching and learning
When is
people
it?
who are in there with me have any understanding of what he's talking about.
Okay. So any other, on the Benson issue?
I want to acknowledge there are 2 other strong arguments I want to make, but I am very aware of the time and we need to go. I recognize that, so we'll bring them up later.
I just want to say really briefly, I feel like as a board, we're making a huge value statement about Benson with our bond.
Yeah.
And what we want to see Benson be under our bond. And what Antonio's addressing right here is a short-term issue that is very related to the bond and to construction. And I think the sentiments expressed by Principal Callan about the impact on Madison right now and Jefferson are very real. And I think this makes sense in the short term, and it doesn't take anything away from our bullishness on Benson in the long term.
And that is absolutely right. That's the impact that it has. And when we're looking at the staffing in terms of what this year the budget is gonna look like, there are gonna be some, anyway, so this will help us in terms of sometimes the pay not be that deep in some of the schools that they will be losing kids. So this is a 1 year that will help us bring some level of stability until we figure out what are these other things and how they wanna manifest themselves.
Okay. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.